Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo, and in this Photoshop Masterclass video lesson we're going to look at the Liquify filter. Now this is a special filter found in all versions of Photoshop, and what it does, it allows you to distort, twist, twirl, rotate, blur, smudge, bend. It allows you to basically liquify and change an image into something else. I'll just click on this picture of me so you can get a rough idea. So you can take something, a normal mugshot like that, and you can turn it into something a bit more amusing perhaps. Or using it in a more subtle way, you can enhance a portrait pretty much imperceptibly. This portrait here has been liquefied. I'll show you the original. That's the original picture. We've just tweaked it slightly and retouched it using Liquify just to enhance a few bits and pieces around the face. And the second example here, the subtle liquefaction effects, that's the interesting thing, because that's really what Liquify is about. Everybody does this kind of thing. They create caricatures, go mad with this tool, and as a result of that, it gets kind of a non-serious name as a retouching tool. Because you can create extreme and grotesque effects using Liquify, people see Liquify as an extreme and a grotesque tool. And of course, it doesn't have to be, it's just the way you use it. But of course, the first thing people want to do is do the funny stuff, do the amusing stuff. So let's close down both these pictures and have a look at the caricature first of all, where we go a bit extreme with Liquify and see how we can make that work. If we pop up to File, Open, let's open up, where are we, John JPEG, that one should do the trick. We'll open that onto screen, then all we have to do is go to Filter, Liquify, there it is there, and that will open up the rather large Liquify palette. There we have it. We've got a toolbox down the left hand side, and we've got some tool options here, how we actually set up the tools for them to be used down the right hand side. If we quickly run through the tools, up at the top we have what's called the forward warp tool, which sounds very Star Trek. What this does, you can actually move pixels around, push things around, distort them. It's very much like the smudge tool actually in the regular Photoshop interface. And this allows you to do kind of weird Klingon effects, and you can change brush size just as you can normally by using the square brackets keys, or over here in the options you can actually move the slider to make the brush size bigger or smaller. So there's forward warp to start with. The next one we have is the reconstruct tool. Now this isn't just an undo tool, this is really useful. It works as a brush just like anything else. But when you've made your liquefaction of a particular part of the image, you can actually reduce the effect of it or undo it. So you can actually pull things back to how they were before using reconstruct. And the way reconstruct works is governed by the mode you use. There are various options here, stiff, rigid, stiff, smooth, loose, which will actually govern how the undo, how the reconstruct works. Moving down the list, we've next got the twirl tool, or the twirl clockwise tool. And this actually rotates the pixels. It spins them in a shape that's the same as the icon, kind of a galaxy shape. So if we use a large brush and we use the twirl tool, it will twirl clockwise like so. So you get that kind of weird distortion effect. That's horrible, isn't it? Please forgive me while I just use the reconstruct tool and undo that. If you want to twirl the other way, if you want to twirl anti-clockwise, just hold down the Alt key and then apply the tool and it will go. So you can do anti-clockwise and clockwise twirls at the same time. This is why Liquify is such fun, you see. You can't help but be amused by the effects you get. Next down we have the pucker tool. You have to be quite careful how you say that sometimes. The pucker tool actually reduces the size of something from the outer edge of the circle inwards. So if we want to make a smaller nose, then we can simply pucker it. It's like you pucker lips, it does that kind of thing. So we can actually make the nose smaller in that way, or we could do the same with the mouth. And we're puckering in, or gathering the pixels from the outside of the brush icon towards the inside. So that's pucker. Bloat, the next one down, that does the opposite of pucker, and that pushes pixels from the center outwards. So if you want to enlarge an eye, for example, just get the brush size, the right kind of size, something like that, and then click down to bloat that eye outwards. You can make quite large eyes that way if you want to do that sort of thing. So there's bloat. Next one, we've got some curious tools. We've got the push left tool. This is a bit of an odd one. If you drag the mouse downwards while using push left, it will actually push to the right. Push the mouse upwards when using push left, and it will push to the left. Go across. You see, it sort of goes up and down depending on which way you drag the mouse when you're using it. And to be honest, it's not a huge amount of use. The same can be said of the mirror tool. If we click on that one, you get some curious effects where it mirrors whatever's on the right of the mouse if you drag downwards, or the left of the mouse if you push upwards. It's not particularly useful, so I'm going to pop back to the reconstruct tool and just revert those changes I've made. There we go. Next down is the turbulence tool. It looks like some waves here, and that's handy because that's exactly what it does. It generates a random effect, and that's dependent on how you set the turbulent jitter in the brush options. Again, because it's random, it's not actually very useful. Liquify should really be about controlling what you want to do to an image, rather than letting software algorithms randomly sort of move stuff around. So, again, you don't really need the turbulence tool. What is useful, though, is the next one down. This is the freeze mask tool. And if you click on that, what you can do is actually freeze an area. So here I've frozen the eyes, and that means that any more liquefaction I indulge in will not affect the eyes. So if I take the forward warp tool and move stuff around, you can see it's not affecting the areas I've frozen. It's affecting everything else, but not those particular areas. And of course, once you're done with the freeze mask, you can actually use the thaw mask. Click on the thaw mask and you can remove those masked red areas, and then you can liquefy to your heart's content as you would have done before. So we can actually liquefy those areas now. Beneath that we've got the hand tool, which just allows you to scroll around the image, and the zoom tool, so you can move in nice and tight if you want to. The hand tool, of course, operates in the same way as the normal Photoshop hand tool. If you want to jump to it quickly, just hold down the space bar and you automatically go to the hand tool. Double click on it and you go back to full screen. Right, so that's a brief introduction to the tools. Now let's put them into practice to see how they work. The first thing I'm going to do is the reconstruct, because we've made rather a mess of my face here. So we'll just run the reconstruct over what we've achieved so far and get back to a more normal looking human. There we go. Now for doing sort of extreme caricature effects, one of the useful things of course is the bloat tool, because normally people want to enlarge eyes or enlarge noses or mouths or something like that. So we're going to first of all go to the bloat tool. There it is there. Click on that and set it up so you've got it about the same size as an eye. That looks perfect, just there. Then click on the pupil and just a few clicks should do it. Just do it gently, that's enough there. Same thing on the other eye till they're about the same size. And there we go, we've got that enlarged eye caricature look. What we can do next is actually zoom in a bit and enlarge the pupils. So if we just take the bloat tool again, reduce brush size so it's just about the same size as the iris, that should do the trick. Then our bloating won't extend outside the boundaries of the brush, so we can actually just enlarge pupil size like so. Hold down the spacebar to move across and we'll beef up that pupil size as well. There we have it. Double click the hand tool to go back to full screen. Now a good way to make eyes look a bit larger is to of course make the other facial features look a bit smaller. So the pucker tool comes next. We'll just select that. Larger brush size, just holding down the square brackets key. And then we'll make the nose a bit smaller. There we go. Smaller nose coming through. We'll just go down to the middle bit. That's it. Reducing the size of the nose. We'll do the same with the mouth. There we have it. And I think we can now probably have a bit of fun, make those eyes just a touch larger. So back to the bloat. There we go. That's starting to look remarkably silly. Fantastic. Then what we'll use is the forward warp tool. And we're just going to shrink down the chin just a touch. So we're just moving in little bit by bit. That's the kind of thing. Just reshaping the face slightly. And we'll leave some exaggerated cheekbones, because that's always good for a laugh. And that's there or thereabouts. Now we've done that, what we can do is actually exaggerate the hair in a fairly crazy way. And again we can do this using the forward warp tool, so we'll reduce the brush size. Quite a small brush now, something like that should do, about 15 pixels. And you can see brush size just here in the options. All we're going to do is drag spikes of hair out from the center. We're using it now, the forward warp, just like the smudge tool in the regular Photoshop interface. Just pulling it out bit by bit, just to add some crazy spikes to the hair. Now to do this in detail will take me a couple of minutes, so I'll rejoin you in a second once I've finished spiking up the hair. And just finishing off this area here now. And there you can see that we've spiked up the hair using the forward warp as a kind of smudge tool. And that's the job done. Now, we can make a couple more changes. Again, I'm going to enlarge those eyes just a touch more because we are looking for a fairly extreme caricature effect. Something like that should do the trick. That's it. I'm just going to move that one up a touch. The head's not quite level in this shot, so just take the whole eye and just shift it up a little bit. And that's the kind of thing. There we go. So there you have a ridiculous looking caricature. I've of course picked my face so I don't deface anyone else in such a ridiculous way, and that's how you can have lots of fun. And when you've got something you're happy with, you can save the mesh if you want to. If you think of a wire grid all the way over this image, the mesh reveals the parts that have been twisted, pulled and distorted out of shape. So if you want to look at the mesh, we can. In the options here, go to Show Mesh, tick that box. Then you can actually get rid of the image if you want to. And you can see here all of the areas where we've liquefied the image. You can see all the various shapes and distortions. And you can save that mesh if you want to as an MSH file. Just go to Save Mesh, and you can save it as a caricature mesh or whatever you want to. We'll just save that. And then you can load it up at any time. So if, for example, we just quit out of that liquefy tool, we're back to our normal image, all we have to do is go to Filter, Liquefy, make sure we can see the image. Then all we need to do is go to Load Mesh, find the mesh we've saved, open it up, and it will instantly apply the liquefy effect that you've created. So if you're doing a work in progress and need to leave your PC to do something else, saving the mesh is always a good idea with liquefy, because it means you can jump straight back in to where you left off. Okay, once you're happy with your liquefy effect, and I just need to move that nose across a little bit, there we go, that's the sort of thing. Yeah, and maybe just tweak those eyebrows. If we're going to do a caricature, let's do it stupidly. There we go. Once we're happy with all that, all we need to do is press OK, and the taskbar will run as the liquefy is applied to the image. Now by using Control and Z, you can actually see the before and after. You're just undoing it, so Control and Z will show us that's where we came from. I think that one's actually worse than the liquefied version. But we go from there, Control and Z will take us to the liquefied version. So that's before and that's after, and you can choose which one you like the best. Right, with the extreme effects over with, let's have a look at what we can do with liquefy to make a more subtle retouching job. So we'll close this one down because I've had enough of looking at that. There we go. We're going to open up Face JPEG. So we'll just go to Face and open up this particular shot. There we go. What we're going to do is try and enhance the features in this portrait, just to add a bit more warmth to it. We're not going to change it dramatically, we're just going to add a touch more warmth. So let's see how we can use liquefy in a far more subtle way to achieve that. Well, the first thing we're going to do is just bring our layers palette in, just go to Window and choose Layers. Window, Layers, there we are. If yours isn't on screen, then we're just going to copy the background layer by dragging it to the Create a New Layer icon. This gives us a copy layer, and we're going to liquefy this layer so we keep our background as it should be, intact and untouched. Right, the next job is to go to the liquefy filter, so Filter and Liquefy, and that brings up our familiar dialog box. Need to zoom in a bit here, so we'll just click the zoom button a couple of times so we can see clearly what we're doing. Then we just hold down the spacebar and position the model's face so we can see what we're doing properly. There we go. Now a standard cover retouching trick is to enlarge the eyes slightly. So we're first of all going to do that, and that's of course with the bloat tool. So select the bloat tool, then we need to get the brush size is about right actually. Something around there should do the trick, about 125 pixels or so. And then line up the target on the pupil and simply click just a couple of times, not too much. Next do the next eye. That's enough there. If it starts looking a bit outrageous or out of the ordinary, you've gone too far. So if you go too far, just go to the Reconstruct tool and go back to where you started and try again. Following on from there, we're going to enlarge the pupils, just as we did with the caricature, but to do this we need a smaller brush. So we just reduce brush size, and I'll zoom in a bit actually first, just to make sure I do a decent job. There we go. Bloat tool again, reducing brush size, just so it's the same size as the iris, that should do the trick. Okay, then bang in the middle of the pupil again, just click a couple of times, and you see that pupil grow. Larger pupils give more attractive and more engaging expressions, so that's why we're doing that, and that's why it's a standard trick for cover model retouching. Don't go too far or it'll become obvious. And if anything does become obvious when you're trying to do subtle liquefaction effects, then you've gone wrong. Okay, I think that's the eyes done. We'll just double click the hand tool so we can see the whole thing. That doesn't look unnatural, that looks okay, so that's good. Let's zoom in again, and the next thing we're going to work on is a subtle smile. Now there's a hint of a sort of a Mona Lisa smile in the model's face, but we're going to exaggerate that slightly. So we pick up the forward warp tool, and you need a brush size about 100 pixels on this image. Don't make the brush too small for this. We're going to take the corners of the mouth and just tweak them slightly. That's the kind of thing. A little bit of movement just to get everything looking nice and level. Just moving the mouth around slightly. That should do the trick. I think that's probably enough. There's just a hint of a smile there, just to help add that friendliness to the expression. And that's good. Perhaps a little more on that side, and that's enough. Now we've done that, we're going to freeze those areas. So I'm going to select the freeze tool here. I'm just going to cover the eyes, like so, and the mouth, because we don't want those to be altered from this point onwards. There we go, they're now frozen in place. It looks a bit strange, looks like some dodgy makeup, but they're actually frozen in place from any other liquefying effects. What we're going to do now is just hold down the spacebar and scroll round a bit. We're going to use the forward warp tool just to thin out the jawline slightly. This is another standard cover trick. So small movements at a time. Don't go mad with this, because you really don't have to. Little changes are all it takes. Just moving that jawline in slightly. There we go. And just the chin slightly as well. That's the kind of thing. This is just kind of thinifying the face. That's it. And we're just going to do the ear as well. The angle of the camera's actually made the ear look a bit more exaggerated than it should be. So we'll just bring that in as well, just a touch. That's it. Small movements, big changes. Now we're just going to do a little bit of work on the nose, so we'll zoom in again. There we go. This time we'll use the pucker tool, so we're just going to do a little bit of slimming. Oops, that's too much there, so let me just go to reconstruct. Just bring that back out again, there we go. Now back to the pucker. Just a little bit of work on the nose there. That's the kind of thing. I think that's about right. Just need to reconstruct this area here slightly. That's it. Then we're just going to use the forward warp. Use a large brush. And again, we've got the mouth frozen, so we can't affect that. We're just going to move the nose up just a touch. That's the kind of thing. And then we're just going to push this bit out, and that bit in. That should do it. Go back to full screen mode. I think that's the job done. What I might do actually, before we quit out of this, I might just do a little bit of work on the eyebrows. So I need to thaw out the eyes slightly here. So we just take the thaw tool and make sure that this top part of the eyebrow isn't frozen anymore. That will allow us to move it with the liquefy tool. Move that across like that. That's it. So that's exposed the eyebrows. I'll just zoom out a bit. To zoom out a touch, just hold down the Alt key with the zoom tool selected and click a couple of times. There we go. Then forward warp tool. Reasonable size brush, sort of 70 pixels, 80 pixels, something like that. We're just going to raise the eyebrows just a touch, like so. That should do the trick. Okay, now we can thaw everything out. Because we're done here, take the thaw mask and you can actually take a look at your handiwork. And it shouldn't look too bad at all. You see there's a subtle smile coming through there. We haven't made dramatic changes. There's no big difference between this and the original image, so we're just going to click OK. And once the liquefy tool's run, you can see that everything looks pretty normal. We haven't got anything dramatic going on there, and no one would actually know that that picture had been retouched using the liquefy tool. Of course, we made a background copy and worked on that layer, so if we switch it off, we can see where we came from. And that's where you see the difference. It is subtle, but you see all those little changes we've made give a friendlier, a warmer expression, and it actually adds a bit more of a smile where there wasn't one there before. So that's what you can do using the subtle side of liquefy. So next time you do a portrait session and take some shots, don't discount the Liquify tool. It's not just for making caricatures, but can actually be a fantastic retouching tool to enhance expression in portraits. Alright, thanks for listening. Enjoy using the Liquify tool, and please use a bit of restraint and don't go too mad with it. Cheers.